I'm Matt.
I'm Christy. We're married.
We like long walks on the beach.
Oh my gosh.
You've sat through 18 hours of Star Trek The Next Generation. You've definitely seen it.
I'm a trophy wife in that regard. I asked him if we could watch a space show the other day.
But you still call them space shows.
It's what it is if it's in outer space.
No, it's science fiction.
In space. We've been married for 14 years. A couple years ago, we felt just this feeling that something was about to happen in our lives, but we didn't know what.
Our jobs tended to be more stateside. With some aspects of my other life and almost your entire thing, we felt like God was
preparing us for something, but we didn't know what. And we thought maybe it's a move to LA. But over the course of the past couple of years, I discovered Rose on Instagram. And I think you actually found it on your own too.
It was Mark's conversation with an Indigenous pastor in the city after the little ones were found in Kamloops. And then as a teacher, September was coming around, he announced a backpack drive. This was a church in touch with the community, and that's something that was really intriguing to me. And
I think you said we should go check it out, and I was like, maybe one day, we'll go, and then we didn't. The place that we have been going for the last 30 years has just been our whole lives. So for us, going somewhere new was never something I ever thought would happen. But I remember specifically, we were sitting right over there, and we turned on Rose. Roberta was preaching on mental health, and I was playing with my kids with toys, and I just stopped. And I was just staring at the TV, and I was like, I have never heard a pastor speak on mental health before.
But not just that.
A female.
And without calling it a demon.
I just felt so understood in that moment. It seemed so real to me. And I was just like, we have to go. And I was so nervous. I wanted to throw up. I was just I had never been anywhere new in my entire life. As we were driving there, I thought about all the times in our lives that we went through something difficult or something uncomfortable.
The story of our lives.
Yeah.
Everything. We got married, and then all of the hard stuff started to happen, right? You got pregnant 6 months in. I had a major career shift, which I'm convinced God had been speaking to me about it for about a year leading up to it. And then it was actually time to go, and it wasn't my decision.
You were barely working.
Right.
And you went through a really hard time of I feel like you went through a depression during that time.
And we had Kate, and you were pregnant with Grace.
And then after Grace was born, I got in a car accident, and I was off work for a full year. You were substitute teaching.
I was literally running from teaching. I was doing everything in my power not to do it. And finally I gave in to God and said, okay, fine.
We bought all the Christmas presents for that Christmas, and we realized we'd made a mistake in our budgeting, and we were in overdraft. And we couldn't pay for our groceries. We couldn't pay our bills. So
we couldn't pay our mortgage.
We decided to return all of our Christmas presents. And that's one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. And we were like, God, I don't know how is this going to happen, but you got to get us through. And we got a check in the mail for $1,000.
It was the testimony that you hear that never happens to you. My aunt had died, and my uncle sent us the Christmas card, and there was a check in the Christmas card for $1,000. And the memo line of the check had said, because Auntie Joan wanted you guys to have a good Christmas.
So we went and we rebought all the Christmas presents for our kids.
The day before Christmas.
And then we figured things out.
Yeah.
But time after time, stuff like that has happened.
We can't explain it, but amazingly impossible things happened to this family. And that just became the mantra, right? That when we were believing for something, amazingly impossible things happen to this family out of the blue when we stand in faith and believe. And it just continues to happen. We see the fruits of that all the time.
We were in Disneyland, and so it was a surprise on the trip. I told you that I was pregnant. And then on that trip, I woke up and I was bleeding one morning. And I knew that something wasn't right. And we went to the hospital, and we found out that we had lost our baby, which was really tough.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving the hospital, and we were like, what do we do? Do we go home? Do we stay? And the doctor had actually said, it'd be good for you to stay. So he pushed me around a wheelchair in Disney. And it was this weird thing of being in the happiest place on earth, but feeling just so sad.
Yeah.
And And we got home, and a few months later, we were pregnant again, and we lost that baby too. And it's a kind of grief that I don't really know how to explain, but I just remember in that moment, like, God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And as we were driving to church that day, I just remembered all of these times in our lives when God was there, and we were like, how are we going to get through this? And like, why am I going through this? And every time he was with us, and he was like, I'm not going to leave you now. Like, I was with you through all of those times. And driving there, I was like, God, if you could just like send one person that I've met sometime in my life just to make me feel like this is going to be okay, that would be great. So we got there and we pulled up, and beside us pulled up Dave and Cindy Broadfoot, who, if you've met them, they're like the warmest people.
Yeah.
And Dave wrapped me in this big hug, and I was shaking like a leaf. And they walked in with us.
Yeah.
And I can't explain the feeling that I felt. Praise and worship started, and Justin said, welcome. We hope it feels like home to you today. And the thing that we had been saying is like, this feels like home. And I bawled through all of praise and worship. Like, that's never happened to me in my entire life.
Yeah.
There was just something so special about it because it was so authentic. It made me, in that service, draw into my relationship with God in a way that I hadn't in a really long time. This was the thing that God was preparing us for.
This was the move.
And we didn't know what it would be. And then that moment we were like, yeah, this is it. And we were like, we have to bring the kids.
But then we were like,
we have to bring the kids. We were like, popcorn? You guys, there's popcorn. It's in a movie theater. We made it really exciting. And we went, and they were like, that was cool. Kate came with us to Growth Track, and I remember Mark coming up and talking to you.
And he's like, we can just plug her in. Where does she want to serve? I said, she served in nursery at our last church. And he says, oh, good, because we need some help. We'll just plug her right in, and I'll tell Roberta.
She's like, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah. And like, she'd bought in.
And then the kids started telling,
amazing thing.
They started telling their friends at school, and then their friends started coming, and like everybody was pumped and on board, and like,
how did this happen? And we hadn't even stayed for a movie yet. We hadn't even, right?
But every Sunday they were like, popcorn, because that was the thing that started. But like, I think about how planted they are now and how plugged in, and like, they are right in kids, and they love it. And they're the ones now, they're like, okay, it's time to go. We got to get to church. And they're just so excited for it. But I think about like the future, and I think about our kids' future. I get so excited, but I just like, I get really emotional about it, because this move for us is not something that I ever thought would happen. It's not something that we planned for, but it's been the biggest blessing in our lives. I can see the next 10, 20, 30 years of our family, of our kids, I can see Jack drumming up there. Like, I can see the girls running the whole kids ministry one day. Like,
oh gosh.
I think about the future, and it makes me really happy, because, we found this place that feels like home to us, but it feels like home to our whole family.
We were thrown a ball, and they picked it up and ran with it.
Deciding to go and taking that step was one of the best decisions we've ever made. It just makes me
we didn't even know what it was, right? Like, that's just the craziest thing, is that all of the moves of God on our life was that we didn't know what was happening.
But God prepared us both. Like, and I think that's maybe why the transition why it felt so right, is because like, he prepared our hearts. Like, something is coming. And we didn't know what, but then we were like, and it was right.
Yeah.
And now our kids get to experience that for.
Yeah. How awesome is that? Look what we made.
Look what God did.